students, I am Parul Divakar, Assistant Professor. Today we are going to deal with an interesting episode of B.Pharm on an important title, Economics. Our topic expert is CA Anurag Jain and myself. Our topic Economics is divided into two segments, Economic 1 and Economic 2. Today we are going to deal with the first segment, that is Economics 1. So let us start our episode while taking a look at what we are going to learn today. So let's start today's episode. This topic consists of 5 modules. Module 1, Introduction. Module 2, Principles of Economics. Module 3, Demand and Supply. Module 4, Laws of Demands and Supply. Module 5, Supply-Demand Relationship. Now, starting with very first module, Module 1, Introduction. Economics is the study of how society manages its scarce resources. In most societies, resources are allocated not by a single central planner, but through the combined action of millions of households and firms. Economists therefore study how people make decisions, how much they work, what they buy, what they save, and how they invest their savings. Economists also study how people interact with one another. It is the study of production and consumption of goods and the transfer of wealth to produce and obtain those goods. According to Quality Assurance Agency of Higher Education, economics is the study of the factors that influence income, wealth, and well-being. It is a social science that incorporates maths and statistics, as well as having connections with the physical science, means biology, medicines, and physics, and many other disciplines like politics, law, geography, and psychology too. Next is the circular flow. This diagram is a systematic representation of the organization of the economy. Decisions are made by the households and firms. Households and firms interact in the market for goods and services, where the households and buyers and firms and sellers, and in the markets for the factors of production, where firms are the buyers and the households are the sellers. The outset of an arrow shows the flow of dollars and the inner set of arrow shows the corresponding flow of goods and services. You can refer to the diagram shown on the screen. Now moving to next module, that is module 2, Principles of Economics. It includes 10 principles of economics. George Mankiw outlines 10 principles of economics that were replicated here. They are: first point is how people make decision. It includes 4 subpoints. First, people face trade-offs. To get one thing, you have to give up something else. Making decisions requires trading off and goes against another. Second is the cost of something is what you give up and get it. The decisions makers have considered both the obvious and the implied cost of their actions. Third, rational people think at the margin. A rational decision maker take action and only if the marginal benefits of the actions exceeds the marginal cost. Fourth, people respond to incentives. Behavior changes as the cost or benefit changes. Now the next is how the economy works as a whole. It includes 3 subpoints. That is, fifth, trade can make everyone better off. Trade allows each person to specialize in the activities he or she does not best. By trading with others, people can buy great variety of goods or services. Next is 6th point. Markets are usually a good way to organize economic activity. Households and firms that interact in the market economics act as if they are guided by an invisible hand that leads the market to allocate resources efficiently. The opposite of this is economic activity that is organized by the central planner with the government. Last point is 7th, government can sometimes improve the market outcomes. When a market fails to allocate resources efficiently, the government can change the outcomes through the public policy. Examples are regulations against monopolies and pollutions. Now the next segment is how people interact. It includes 8 points. A country's standard of living depend on its ability to produce goods and services. Countries whose workers produce a large quantity of goods and services per unit of time enjoy a high standard of living. Similarly, as a nation's productivity grows, so does its average income. Ninth point, price rise when the government prints too much money. When the government creates a large quantity of the nation's money, the value of money fails. As a result, price increases, requiring more of the same money to buy goods and services. The last point is 10th point, society faces a short-run trade-off between inflation and unemployment. Reducing the inflation causes a temporary rise in the unemployment. This trade-off is crucial for understanding the short-run effects of changes in the taxes, government spending and monetary policies. Now, the next module is Module 3, Demand and Supply. The supply and demand is perhaps one of the most fundamental concepts of economics, and it is the backbone of market economy. Demand is the representation of various amount of a product that a consumer are willing and are able to purchase at each of a series of possible prices during a specific period of time. The quantity demanded is the amount of product people are willing to buy at a certain price. The relationship between price and quantity demanded is known as demand relationship. The concept of demand is used in the vernacular to mean almost any kind of wish or desire or need. But an economist, demand refers to both willingness and the ability to pay. Demands are of two types: direct demand for consumption of goods and services that satisfy consumers' desire. Second is derived demand. They are sometimes called intermediate goods. For example, demand of steel, an intermediate good, is derived from demand for final good. Example, automobiles. Quantity demanded. Amount of a good that a consumer is willing to buy and able to buy at a given price over a period of time. The next is demand schedule, a list showing quantity of a good that a consumer would choose to purchase at different prices, with all other variables held constant. Price and quantities normally move in opposite direction. You can refer to table shown on the screen. Demand curve graphically shows the relationship between the price of a good and the quantity demanded, holding constant all other variables that influence demand. Next is demand function. A demand function is causal relationship between a dependent variable, that means quantity demanded, and the various independent variable, that means factors which are believed to influence quantity. Q is equals to Fp, where Q is equals to quantity, P is price of a good and F is constant. Example, Q is equals to 2 minus 4P. Shift of the demand curve. A change in the demand is reflected by shift of demand curve and is caused by a change in any of the non-price determinants of demand. Here the curve shifts due to an increase in income or an increase in the price of substitute good, etc. You can refer to graph on the screen. A change in the quantity demanded is however reflected in movement along the demand curve and is called as extension or contraction of demand. The movement from A to B is due to change in the price of good and other factors remaining unchanged. The next is supply. The amount of a product that a producer are willing and are able to make available for sale at each of the series of price during a specified period. Supply represents how much the market can offer. The correlation between price and how much a good or service is supplied to the market is known as supply relationship. Price therefore is reflection of supply and demand. Next is supply schedule, a list showing the amount of a product that a producer would produce and sell at a series of varying prices during a certain time with all other factors held constant. There exists a positive relation between quantity and price. The table shown on the screen enlists that. Supply curve. the graphical representation of relation between quantities supplied of a good that the producer are willing and are able to sell and the price of the good. Supply function shows the relation between quantity and price. It is a positive relation. Example, Q is equals to 4 3P. Next is determinants of supply. Determinants of supply. It includes price, cost of production, technological process, price of related outputs, government policy. All factors other than price cause a shift of the supply curve and is called change in the supply. The relationship between demand and supply underlie the forces behind the allocation of resources. In market economy theories, demands and supply theory will allocate the resources in the most efficient way possible. Before moving to our next module, I would like to suggest you to visit our website www.cec.nic.in for further reading and learning of more topics associated with our B.Pharm syllabus. Here you will find many lectures, e-contents, FAQs, LORs and many more. Hope this site will be a catalyst of learning for you. Module 4, Law of Demand and Supply. It is a theory explaining the interaction between supply of resource and the demand of that resource. The law of supply and demands define the effect that availability of a particular product and the desire or demand for a product on price. Generally, if there is low supply and high demand, the price will be high. In contrast, greater the supply and lower the demand, lower the price will be. The law of supply and demand is not an actual law, but it is well confirmed and understood realization that if you have a lot of one item, the price of that item would go down. At the same time, you need to understand the interaction even if you have a high supply. If the demand is also high, the price could also be high. In the world of stock investing, the law of supply and demand can contribute to explaining a stock's price at any given time. It is the base to any economic understanding. The next is law of demand. The law of demand. The law of demand states that if all other factors remain equal, higher the price of the good, the lesser people will demand that good. In other words, the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded. The amount of good that buyers purchase at a higher price is less because as the price of the good goes up, so does the opportunity cost of the buying that good. As a result, people will naturally avoid buying that product that will force them to forego the consumption of something else. They value more. The chart below shows the curve is a downward slope. This relationship can be shown by a demand schedule, demand curve or a demand function. You can refer to graph shown on the screen. A, B and C are the points on the demand curve. Each point on the curve reflects a direct correlation between the quantity demanded Q and price P. So at point A, the quantity demanded will be Q1 and at price will be P1 and so on. The demanding relationship curve utilizes a negative relationship between price and quantity demanded. The higher the price of the good, the lower the quantity demanded A, and the lower the price, the more the good will be in demand C. Now, the next is law of supply. Like the law of demand, the law of supply demonstrates the quantities that will be sold at certain price. But unlike the law of demand, the supply relationship shows an upward slope. This means the higher the price, the higher the quantity supplied. Producers supply more at higher price because selling a higher quantity at higher price increases revenue. The next is time and supply. Unlike the demand relationship, however, the supply relationship is a factor of time. The time is important to supply because the suppliers must but cannot always react quickly to change in the demand and price. So it is important to try and determine whether a price change that is caused by demand will be temporary or permanent. Let's say there is a sudden increase in the demand and price of umbrellas in unexpected rainy season. The suppliers may simply accommodate demanded by using the production equipment with more intensively. If, however, there is a climate change and the population will need umbrellas year round, the change in the demand and the price will be expected to be long term. Suppliers will have to change the equipment and production facilities in order to meet the long term levels of demand. Now moving to last module, module 5, supply and demand relationship. Let's turn into an example to show how supply and demand affect price. Let's imagine that a special edition CD of a favorite band is released for $20. Because the record company previously analysis showed that the consumer will not determine CDs at a price higher than $20. Only the 10 CDs were released because the opportunity cost is too high for suppliers and to produce more. If, however, the 10 CDs are demanded by 20 people, the price will be subsequently rise because according to demand relationship, as demand increases, so does the price. Consequently, the rise in price prompt more CDs to be supplied as the supply. The relationship shows that higher the price, the higher the quantity supplied. If, however, there are 30 CDs produced and demanded is still at $20, the price will not be pushed up because the supply more than accommodates demand. In fact, after the 20 consumes have been satisfied their CD purchases, the price of the leftover CDs may drop as CD producers attempts the sell to remaining 10 CDs. The lower price will then make the CD more available to people who had previously decided that the opportunity cost of buying the CDs at $20 was too high. The next is equilibrium. When supply and demand are equal, that means supply function and demand function intersect. The economy is said to be equilibrium. At this point, the allocation of goods is at its efficient because the amount of goods being supplied is exactly the same as the amount of goods being demanded. Thus, everyone, individual, firm or countries is satisfied with the current economic condition. At the given price, suppliers are selling all the goods that they have produced and consumers are getting all the goods that they are demanding. As it can be seen on the chart, equilibrium occurs at the intersection of the demand and supply curve, which indicates no allocative inefficiency. At this point, the price of good will be P and the quantity will be Q. These figures are referred to as equilibrium price and quantity. In the real marketplace, equilibrium can only be even reached in the theory. So, the prices of goods and services are constantly changing in relation to fluctuations in the demand and supply. Moving to next, that is disequilibrium. Disequilibrium occurs when the price of the quantity is not equal to P or Q. First, excess supply. If the price set is too high, excess supply will be created with the economy and there will be allocative inefficiency. The price P1, the quantity of good that the producer wish to supply is indicated by QT at P1. However, the quantity that the consumer want to consume at Q1 a quantity much less than Q2 because Q2 is greater than Q1. Too much is being produced and too little is being consumed. The suppliers are trying to produce more goods which they hope to sell to increase profit. But those consuming the goods will find the product less attractive and purchase less because the price is too high. Second is excess demand. Excess demand is created when the price is set below the equilibrium price because the price is too low. Too many customers want the good while the producers are not making enough of it. This is the situation at price P1. The quantity of good demanded by the consumer at this price is Q2. Conversely, the quantity of the goods that producers are willing to produce at all these prices is Q1. Thus, the too few goods being produced to satisfy the wants, that means demands, of the consumers. However, as the consumers has to compete with one another to buy the good at this price, the demand will push the price up, making suppliers want to supply more and bringing the price closer to the equilibrium. Now, coming to conclusion of this topic, a market is an environment where buyers and sellers interact to exchange goods, the prices for which are determined both by the supply and demand of them. A market uses prices to reconcile decisions about the consumption and production. The supply and demand models helps to explain how the market works and gives the greater understanding of actual market behavior. Therefore, analysis of this concept can be used to develop economic and business decisions and policies. The purpose of this lecture is to outline the basic elements of the model and discuss the usefulness in determining the actual behavior of marketplace. The supply of goods and resources are limited in comparison to people's requirements, and individual must make a decision based on what goods to buy, produce and what goods to forego. Because of this scarcity of resources, individual business and governments must make decisions on how to allocate them most efficiently. The market mechanism resolves the problem of allocation by adjusting the price to coincide with demand and scarcity. Market prices continuously adjust to quantity supplied. This forms the basis of supply-demand model, which also analyzes the reaction of supplies and customers and makes the prediction about how they will react to change in the market. The predictions are then applied to actual market. The model is beneficial as an aid to maintain economic decisions because the concept assumes the effect of various changes in the theory, which can be applied in practice to actual business world. Thank you friends. Hope to see you soon in the next lecture.